Hello and welcome to Casual Veteran Gamer. We are looking at some more martial weapons today, and I'm going to start off with an easy one, being the pickaxe, because when we compare the pickaxe to the war pick, the damage is the same, the damage type is the same, the weapon proficiency is the same, the weapon abilities are the same. What isn't the same is the pickaxe is two-handed, whereas the war pick is one-handed, and they require exactly the same proficiency. So I think it's fairly easy to give the pickaxe a 1 out of 10, because if you can wield a pickaxe, you can wield a war pick plus a shield and have 2 extra armor class for the same damage output. There's literally no difference in the damage output, and a war pick is even worth a bit more money. So that one's easy, over and done with, out the way. Next up, I've got my Tavern here. I am using a mod for a paladin in this video, but that doesn't affect the weapons. He is wielding a longsword and a Battleaxe. These are the next two I'm going to look at. And also in this video, I will be looking at the Warhammer. And the reason for grouping these three together is that these are the 3 versatile martial weapons. So they all do 1d8 damage in one hand, but if you are using them two-handed, they deal 1d10 damage. And presumably, if you're using it one-handed, you either have a shield in the offhand, or maybe, just like Tavern here, you have got a second weapon in the offhand, because you've got the dual wielder feat. But most of the time, I presume it's going to be a shield. So let's start with the longsword, since that's what's in his main hand. So the longsword has pommel strike, lacerate, and rush attack. All of these we've seen before from previous weapons, so I'm not going to spend too much time going over these, but I will say that pommel strike is probably one of my favorite weapon abilities, mostly because it uses a bonus action, does a little bit of damage, and inflicts dazed if the target fails a constitution saving throw. And dazed, as a quick reminder, gives them disadvantage on wisdom saving throws, so that's helping out your casters. Can't take reactions, so you take away the opportunity attacks, and they lose the dexterity bonus to the armor class if they've got one, which actually helps out your martial characters in your party, and including the wielder themselves. So pommel strike, great all round, does damage, inflicts status effects. Lacerate, the main reason to inflict lacerate isn't really for the bleed damage, because it's just going to be like 4 damage in total, but it's to give them disadvantage on constitution saving throws, which helps mostly your casters, but some weapon abilities have constitution saving throws to defend against them. And rush attack, this is mostly about movement. It's quite low damage, 1d4 plus 3, or plus your strength modifier, not that great. But if the target is knocked off balance, then they will have disadvantage on strength and dexterity checks, not saving throws, so that's not as useful, so they won't be as good at shoving, essentially. And attack rolls against this creature have advantage. That sounds great until you read a little bit beneath, which says this is removed when the creature gets hit by an attack or when an ally helps it. So it's a bit like Guiding Bolt, that if they suffer this condition, then the next attack against them will have advantage. Or it's a bit better, because you keep having advantage until they get hit. Right, so I'm up against some gnolls here. Actually, let's get everybody hiding together. And one thing I want to point out is rush attack has a 30-foot range. So rush attack has the added bonus compared to, as far as I can recall, any other weapon ability, in that it grants you some movement. And you can even be out of movement and still use it. So I'm going to start off with pommel strike. There we are, the dazed, which is awesome. So it opened up with dazed because it has reduced this Gnoll Flesh Gnora's armor class from 15 down to 13, which is pretty cool. I don't need to use rush attack here. It isn't actually great on the steps because it does need to be a flat surface, but maybe I can go with lacerate. So overall, I really quite like the longsword. Out of these 3 versatile weapons, it's probably my favorite because of pommel strike and rush attack. Lacerate, slightly ambivalent about. It's okay, I'll use it every now and again. But rush attack for getting into and out of dangerous situations, and pommel strike because it's a bonus action, deals damage as I said earlier. So yeah, longsword, fairly impressed with. So I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. It'd be high if it was a finesse weapon, or if it did more damage, but I don't think, well, the highest damage on any one-handed weapon in the game is 1d8. I can't really expect it to get higher. But it is missing the weapon ability like Heartstopper, which stops it from getting any higher also. So next up, I'm going to look at the Battleaxe. I'm actually going to switch them over because the weapon abilities you get are from your main hand. So you'll see that the 2 weapon abilities down here just changed. The longsword has lacerate, as does the Battleaxe. And I can't use it again. I need to short rest before use. So what's different here? There's cleave and crippling strike. Crippling strike reduces the movement speed of an enemy to 0, and they have disadvantage on dexterity saving throws. So you're kind of battlefield control and helping out your casters and maybe some other weapon abilities. Kind of cool. Damage is a bit low, a bit like rush attack. And then we've got cleave. Cleave disappoints me because it didn't used to be like this. So cleave, swing your weapon in the large arc. I would argue that's not that large, but you know, that's just slightly subjective there. To attack up to 3 enemies at once. Before I even do that, it's going to be quite difficult to get 3 enemies at once into the arc. Although saying that, as long as the area just clips the enemy, you can target them. So perhaps I should be a bit more lenient with that. But the damage is not good. They each take half the damage your weapon usually deals. So 3 to 6 damage. Okay, it could be higher if and when his strength goes up, let's say. But 3 to 6 damage, honestly, most of the time, I'd rather have a shot at killing this hyena. In this instance, Cleave will be good at maybe killing the Null Flesh Nora. It's okay because he's got bleeding as well. And then maybe someone else can finish off the hyena, who knows. But I'd probably rather use Crippling Strike. Could use it on the hyena. Actually, you know what, here I probably would use Cleave. And you've got to roll to attack both. And it said 3 to 6 damage, but I actually just did 2. Like, this tooltip is wrong. I don't know why. It's doing 1d8 plus 5. You shouldn't be doing plus 5. It should only be doing plus 3, which is what it's got here in the tooltip. So I'm really unimpressed with Cleave. It used to not do half damage. When it didn't do half damage, it was great. It'd always be looking for chances to use it. Now, I'm a bit like, really just not that into it. Crippling Strike is okay. It could be useful if you run up to someone, cripple them, and if you've got enough movement left, run away or jump. But honestly, these weapon abilities I think are not as good as the Longsword. I mean, they both share Lacerate anyway. One good thing about Battleaxes is that there is a race. Oh, I forgot to say this about the Longsword also. Longswords, you can be proficient with them if you are an elf of any kind. Oh, sorry, an high elf or wood elf. Battleaxes for dwarves. I'm still leave it Longsword at 8 out of 10. I was going to put the Battleaxe at 5, but considering you can be a dwarf and have it, maybe I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Unfortunately, like the Longsword, it's not a finesse weapon. Its damage is okay, but for two-handed damage, it's a bit lacking just compared to other two-handed weapons. If I'm going to be using a weapon two-handed, I'm not going to be using a Longsword, Warhammer, or Battleaxe. I'm going to be using one of the weapons that is a dedicated two-handed weapon. All right, and then that leaves us with one more, which is the Warhammer. Here's the final weapon for today, the Warhammer. Just like the others, it does 1d8 damage, but this time bludgeoning damage. And of the 3 physical types of damage, bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing, bludgeoning has a slight edge because there are a few enemies in the game that are vulnerable to bludgeoning damage, whereas there are no enemies vulnerable to piercing or slashing. So it's kind of a point in favor. It's not a huge thing, but it's just a slight edge. Versatile like the others, and it has some different weapon abilities. Again, ones we've seen before. So we've got Backbreaker, which knocks someone prone, which is really good because they have disadvantage on strength and dexterity saving throws, once again supporting your casters, but attacks against a prone creature have advantage if they're made within 10 feet. You are supporting yourself and your other melee characters, and that creature has to use half its movement speed to stand up, so a tiny bit of battlefield control. Damage isn't great, 1d4 plus your strength, but you're doing this not for the damage, but for the condition of knocking someone prone. Concussive Smash, it does a normal amount of damage plus the ability to daze someone. Already covered that today. Dazed is good to inflict. And Weakening Strike does 1d4 plus strength damage. Can only be used against creatures that are wielding a weapon. If the target fails their strength saving throw, they have disadvantage on attack rolls. That's good, giving them disadvantage on all their attack rolls. And if an ally does help that creature, that's probably a good thing, because otherwise they could have been attacking you and hurting you. And a bit like the Battleaxe, you can be proficient with Warhammers if you are a dwarf. I think this is probably going to be on the same level as a Longsword, because the weapon abilities are good. Let's shove that guy down. Goodbye. Into the Cloud of Daggers. Brilliant stuff. It's got the same damage as a Longsword. It's got decent weapon abilities. This guy's going to die anyway. I don't really need to use a weapon ability, but here we go. Miss. And it's bludgeoning, and a race is proficient with it. So yeah, I'm going to give it another 8 out of 10. Warhammers are good. I just want to say again, with all of these 3 weapons, they're only really that good if you're using them one-handed. And that's another reason why, as I said earlier, I'm not going to make it any higher than 8 for me, because if I'm going to be using it two-handed, I will be using a dedicated two-handed weapon. So let me know what you think of these ratings. Have I been too lenient? Have I been too harsh on some of them? Thank you very much for watching. If you made it this far, please consider subscribing, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Right, now this is the situation. Nothing to do with melee weapons. This is what Cloud of Daggers is for. Look at that Cloud of Daggers doing work there.